Today, we're taking a deep dive into a story that honestly raises some really profound questions about human rights, about global responsibility. We're talking about the Uyghur people. I mean, what if everything you thought you knew about a place was just meticulously twisted? What if an entire people with this incredibly vibrant history and culture were being systematically, brutally erased right before our very eyes, and, so much of the world just turns a blind eye?
Yeah, and this isn't just some political squabble you might skim in a headline. It's not. This is a really gut-wrenching human tragedy. It's unfolding on a colossal scale, and we know this because it's been meticulously pieced together from just mountains of evidence, official documents, leaked files, and the agonizing firsthand accounts of those who actually managed to escape. It's frankly a disturbing blueprint.
Right. So our mission today really is to understand the deliberate mechanisms behind this whole campaign against a distinct culture. We want to peel back those layers of state-sanctioned deception, reveal the chilling architecture of repression, and help you grasp the gravity, really feel the stakes, and recognize the patterns of power and resistance that are playing out here.
Absolutely. We're aiming to go beyond just the headlines, to uncover the cold, hard mechanics of what many international bodies now confirm are crimes against humanity and, yes, even genocide. We want to show you the chilling why behind the almost unthinkable what's.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Before we get into the horrifying present, we absolutely have to understand the past. The Uyghurs aren't some new group that just popped up. Their history is this wild, complex ride through Central Asia's crossroads. They're a Turkic ethnic group, right? Deep roots in a powerful nomadic empire from the 8th century, the Uyghur Khaganate. And this wasn't some minor group. They were a key force on the Eurasian stage. They even saved China's Tang dynasty at one point, apparently got loads of silk for it.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really fascinating and deeply contentious. So when that Khaganate collapsed around 840 AD, a lot of Uyghurs migrated southwest into the Tarim Basin oases, and over time they merged with existing Indo-European populations there, like the Tuscarians. This changed them, from nomadic warriors to settled farmers, city dwellers. Now this history, this very narrative, is a battleground. Uyghur nationalists tell a story of ancient indigeneity. They trace their lineage back thousands of years, claiming direct descent from the region's earliest inhabitants. They call their homeland East Turkestan. They even link themselves to those mysterious Tarim mummies, those Bronze Age folks with European features as proof of their ancient non-Chinese roots.
Okay, but then the Chinese state, Beijing, they have a starkly different story. And it's, well, politically convenient, isn't it? They claim the modern Uyghur ethnicity only formed after that 9th century fusion, basically trying to sever any links to ancient times. They insist Xinjiang has been an inseparable part of Chinese territory since the Han Dynasty, like 2,000 years ago. And they portray the term Uyghur itself as just a modern construct, maybe even Soviet-influenced, not a continuous identity.
And this huge gap, this profound historical chasm, it's not just some academic debate in dusty libraries. It's the damned ideological foundation for China's brutal policies today.
Yeah.
It's all meticulously designed to strip Uyghurs of any claim to a distinct identity, any claim to autonomy. By controlling the past, the state aims to dominate the present and basically shut down any future that doesn't fit their vision of a single, unified Chinese nation. It's a really cruel game of historical erasure.
And their spiritual journey is just as complex, just as fascinating. Imagine a people who, over centuries, embraced multiple world religions before finally settling on their own unique flavor of Islam. You had Manichaeism as the state religion of the old Khaganate. Later, Buddhism was huge in the kingdom of Kocho, magnificent monasteries, incredible art. And alongside those, you had Nestorian Christianity and Zoroastrianism. It was this incredibly vibrant cosmopolitan religious scene. Islamization was gradual, starting around the 10th century, influenced by groups like the Karakani Kanati and Sufi missionaries. By the 16th century, it was pretty much complete.
Yeah, and what's really striking here is the deep, lasting influence of Sufism. We're talking about a really strong veneration of Sufi saints' tombs, these mazars, they're vital pilgrimage sites, community hubs. It's a distinct blend, often incorporating pre-Islamic folk beliefs, shamanistic practices, healing rituals, stuff like that. And this deeply syncretic, localized faith, which has been core to their identity for centuries, is precisely what Beijing now labels extremism, and the state's definition of extremism. I mean, it's so obscenely broad, it criminalizes just praying normally, fasting during Ramadan, owning the Quran, following halal food rules, or even having what they call a non-normal beard or wearing religious clothing. It's insane.
It's unbelievable. So the explicit goal is this thing called Sinicization, basically stripping religion of any distinct cultural identity that might even implicitly challenge the Communist Party's absolute authority. This isn't just suppressing religion in the usual sense. It feels like an attempt at a kind of spiritual lobotomy, hollowing it out completely.
Exactly, a spiritual amputation.
Hmm.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, these aren't just, quaint cultural quirks. We're talking about the language, the music, the crafts. They are the very essence of Uyghur identity. Their language is Turkic, written in Perso-Arabic script, visually totally distinct from Han Chinese. It's now being progressively banned from schools and public life.
And the music. The 12 Muqam, it's this incredibly complex, UNESCO-recognized system of classical music. Sung poetry, instruments, dance.
Yeah, unique instruments too, like the dutar, often played by women, the rawap, gijek. Beautiful stuff.
Then you've got intricate metalwork, those amazing carpets, the vibrant Adris silk tie-dyeing, distinctive pottery, wood carving, and those iconic embroidered hats, the dopas. They're such a powerful symbol of identity, aren't they?
Absolutely. And the state's policies, the Sinicization and de-extremification, they are meticulously engineered to dismantle and erase this entire cultural ecosystem. They're aiming to make sure none of this gets passed down to future generations. It's a comprehensive cultural assassination attempt.
So how the hell did a region so rich in culture become the staging ground for such profound oppression? I mean, this current nightmare, it didn't just appear overnight, did it? It feels like the culmination of centuries of really raw tension.
That's right. The Qing dynasty rolled in and incorporated the territory in the mid-18th century. They named it Xinjiang, which literally means new frontier, in 1884. And that name itself, for many Uyghurs, is just deeply colonial, a constant reminder of being conquered.
And there were those flickers of independence, right? Those brief, ultimately unsuccessful First and Second East Turkestan republics in the 1930s and 40s.
Yeah.
They didn't last, but they really cemented a modern nationalist identity, that desire for statehood.
They did. But then the CCP victory in 1949 brought full, uncompromising control. And okay, they established the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region in 1955, but let's be real, that autonomy was largely symbolic. Real power stayed firmly with the Han-dominated Communist Party.
So it raises that critical question, doesn't it? What happens when a people feel completely stripped of any real political influence?
Exactly. You had decades of Uyghur unrest, things like Osman Batur's rebellion back in the 50s, the Yening Uprising in 62, and the state response. Brutal strike-hard campaigns, especially ramping up since 1996. It just built this deep well of mistrust and animosity. It was a pressure cooker, basically, just simmering for decades, waiting to explode.
And layered on top of that political history is this deliberate demographic shift. Imagine your homeland, your ancestral turf, just systematically transformed from within. That's exactly what's happened. And the main tool for this, the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps, the XPCC, or Bingtuan.
Right. This unique entity established back in 1954. It's part military, part state-owned enterprise, part government administration. A state within a state, really. And its core purpose from the beginning was facilitating mass migration of Han Chinese into the region.
The numbers are just staggering. Han Chinese were, maybe 6 or 7% of the population in 1949. Today, it's around 40%. Uyghurs, who are the overwhelming majority, are now less than half the population of roughly 26 million. This isn't accidental drift. It's deliberate, systematic settler colonialism in action.
And it's not just about the numbers on the ground. It's about the economics. This economic apartheid is a huge source of grievance. It's fueled decades of resentment, of Uyghur nationalism. Xinjiang, on paper, has a high GDP. It's rich in resources, oil, gas, coal, minerals. But where does the wealth go? Disproportionately to Han Chinese individuals, Han-run companies, Han-dominated cities, Uyghurs are largely stuck in low-wage farm labor, maybe some low-level factory work, while the Han migrants snap up the better-paying technical and managerial jobs.
So this economic disenfranchisement, it's not just a side effect. You're saying it's a core part of the strategy.
Absolutely. It's a primary, deeply felt grievance. It's a calculated strategy. Control a population partly by keeping them poor and marginalized, keep them dependent.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Now let's talk about the absolute turning point. The thing that seems to have supercharged this repression into overdrive, China's Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI.
Ah, yes, the BRI. Launched in 2013, Xi Jinping's signature foreign policy project, this massive global infrastructure plan, roads, railways, ports, pipelines, connecting China across Asia to Europe and Africa.
And Xinjiang is absolutely critical to this, isn't it? It's the essential land gateway. the bridge. Like 4 of the 6 major overland economic corridors planned under BRI run straight through Xinjiang.
Yep.
It connects China to Central Asia, South Asia, the Middle East, Europe. It's indispensable.
Precisely. Which means the success of the BRI, which is Xi Jinping's legacy project, hinges on absolute stability in Xinjiang. No dissent, no unrest allowed. Any sign of trouble, any Uyghur aspiration for self-determination suddenly became a direct threat to China's grand global ambitions. This created the political will, the justification for what seems like a final solution approach to the so-called Uyghur problem.
The timing is just chilling when you lay it out like that.
It really is. The sharp escalation, the mass construction of internment camps, the dragnet detentions, it all kicked into high gear around 2017. Right after the BRI's strategic importance became paramount. As one Uyghur witness powerfully told the Canadian Parliament, they are paying the highest price because Uyghurs are seen by China as an obstacle to its dream plan of expansionism.
Wow. And the BRI does more than just provide motive, right? It also provides cover, in a way.
Exactly. Here's the kicker. The BRI isn't just about concrete and steel, it's about diplomatic leverage. Billions in loans and investments create economic dependency. So many nations, even, crucially, Muslim-majority countries you'd expect to seek out, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, they're persuaded or pressured into silence. Or worse, they actively parrot China's narrative at the UN. It effectively creates these permissive conditions for the atrocities. It insulates Beijing from any real, meaningful international accountability.
So let's talk about what's actually been happening on the ground since 2017. This campaign of, well, staggering brutality. It's not random violence. It feels like a meticulously designed system to break a people, to fundamentally dismantle their society.
That's the terrifying reality. At the heart of it is this sprawling network of mass internment camps. Estimates range, but we're talking 1 to 2 million Uyghurs, Kazakhs, other Turkic Muslims arbitrarily detained. Officially, Beijing calls them vocational skills, education, and training centers.
Right. Sounds almost helpful.
Yeah, helpful, but extensive satellite imagery analysis, leaked government documents, and hundreds of survivor testimonies paint a very different picture. They are concentration camps, plain and simple.
And people are just swept up with no legal process.
None whatsoever. The reasons for detention are utterly arbitrary, often Kafkaesque. Traveling abroad, contacting relatives overseas, attending a mosque too regularly, having too many children according to state policy, even just owning a Quran or growing a beard deemed too long.
And inside these places, what happens?
It's a living hellscape based on consistent accounts. Grueling political indoctrination, day in, day out. Forced renunciation of Islam, forced disavowal of Uyghur identity, forced pledges of loyalty to Xi Jinping and the CCP, hours spent singing patriotic red songs, relentless Mandarin language lessons designed to supplant their native tongue. It's psychological torture.
And outside the camps, life isn't much better, is it? The surveillance.
Oh, the surveillance is unprecedented. The entire region has been transformed into this high-tech, open-air prison. Facial recognition cameras everywhere, AI monitoring movement and behavior, systematic collection of biometric data, DNA samples, voice prints, iris scans from nearly every resident, constant monitoring of digital communications, phones, social media. It's a total panopticon.
And then there's that program, Unite as One Family. That sounds particularly sinister.
It's deeply disturbing. Over 1 million Han Chinese cadres, mostly men, are assigned to live in Uyghur homes for mandatory extended homestays. Their job is to monitor the family for any sign of deviant behavior, praying, fasting, not drinking alcohol. They enforce Han cultural norms. And horrifyingly, this puts Uyghur women, whose husbands might be in camps, under constant surveillance by unrelated men in their own homes, creating an environment ripe for coercion and sexual abuse. It's terrifying.
And the legal pretext for all this?
It largely rests on the 2017 Regulation on De-Extremification. This law is incredibly vague and broad. It essentially criminalizes dozens of perfectly normal expressions of Islamic faith and Uyghur culture. Wearing a veil or a long beard, refusing alcohol, giving children religious names, even just saying Assalamu alaikum as a greeting. Under this regulation, merely being a devout Muslim, being culturally Uyghur, becomes a pre-crime justification for detention.
This is where it gets really dark, isn't it? The direct assault on people's bodies, the physical dimension of this, aiming to break not just spirits, but lineage.
Yes. The accounts of physical torture coming out of the camps are consistent and horrific. Severe beatings are routine, electric shocks, prolonged sleep deprivation, withholding food and water. Survivors describe being shackled for days on end in so-called tiger chairs, designed for maximum discomfort and humiliation. techniques resembling waterboarding. It's designed to utterly crush the human spirit.
And the gender-based violence, it sounds absolutely sickening.
It is. Reports are widespread and credible. Rape, gang rape by guards and officials, forced humiliating gynecological examinations, constant surveillance by male guards, even in bathrooms and sleeping quarters. It's a systematic weaponization of sexual violence.
Then there's the population control aspect.
Yeah.
The forced sterilization. This seems absolutely central.
It's undeniably a core component, and perhaps the most damning evidence pointing towards genocide. There's overwhelming evidence of a systematic campaign targeting Uyghur women of childbearing age. Forced sterilization, often through tubal ligations performed without informed consent, sometimes immediately after childbirth. Forced insertion of IUDs, often accompanied by threats of internment if refused. Forced abortions for those found to be violating the state's draconian birth control policies.
And the impact on birth rates is undeniable.
Undeniable and devastating. Research based on China's own official data shows that between 2015 and 2018, birth rates in the predominantly Uyghur southern regions of Xinjiang plummeted by staggering amounts. Some reports indicate drops of up to 84% in certain areas, and you have to ask the question, why this absolute unhinged focus on stopping Uyghur births? Because it directly aligns with one of the 5 acts defined as genocide by the 1948 Genocide Convention, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. It's a calculated attack not just on the present generation, but on the very future existence of the Uyghur people.
And parallel to this physical assault, there's the relentless campaign to just obliterate their culture, their identity, that state goal. Break their lineage, break their roots.
Exactly. It's a multi-pronged cultural eradication effort. You have the religious cleansing, the mass destruction or desecration of thousands of mosques, sacred shrines, the mazars, even cemeteries. Islamic practices are effectively outlawed in public and often punished in private. Even saying Assalamu alaikum can get you in trouble. The goal isn't just suppression, it's to forcibly remold Islam into something completely subservient to Communist Party ideology, stripping it of its spiritual core and cultural meaning.
Have the language.
Linguistic genocide. The Uyghur language is being systematically removed from schools, from public signage, replaced entirely by Mandarin. Children are growing up unable to speak their mother tongue fluently.
And the forced separation of children, that just feels like a particular kind of evil.
It's absolutely heartbreaking and deeply sinister. Estimates suggest as many as 900,000 Uyghur children, some as young as preschool age, have been taken from their families, many whose parents are detained in camps or prisons and placed in state-run boarding schools or orphanages. In these institutions, they're forbidden from speaking Uyghur, practicing their religion, or learning about their own culture. They're immersed in a Mandarin-only environment, subjected to intense CCP political indoctrination. It's a clear, calculated attempt to sever the intergenerational transmission of Uyghur identity, to raise a generation disconnected from their roots.
And this filters down into daily life too, right? Forced assimilation.
Completely. People are compelled to abandon traditional clothing and grooming styles. There are reports of being forced to violate core tenets of their faith, like eating pork or drinking alcohol, often under the watchful eyes of Han cadres during those homestays. Traditional music and dance are either suppressed or co-opted, sanitized, and performed for tourists as a kind of state-approved folklore, stripped of genuine meaning.
So the cumulative effect, it's the systematic dismantling of a living culture.
Absolutely. They're not just trying to suppress it. They are actively trying to annihilate it from the inside out, leaving behind nothing but a hollowed-out, state-sanctioned replica completely controlled by Beijing.
And as if all that wasn't horrific enough, there's the economic exploitation angle, the forced labor. This links the repression directly to global commerce, doesn't it?
It does, in a deeply disturbing way. This operates through basically 2 main channels of coercion. First, you have camp graduates. People released from internment are often directly transferred to work in factories, many built right next to the camps or located in other provinces across China. It's basically an extension of their detention, just in a factory setting.
So not really graduation into freedom.
Not at all. Second, you have these so-called poverty alleviation or labor transfer schemes. Hundreds of thousands of rural Uyghurs are coerced into leaving their homes and taking up factory jobs, often far away. There's no meaningful ability to refuse these placements. Refusal can lead straight back to detention.
And the conditions in these factories.
Predictably exploitative and abusive. Very low pay, punishingly long hours, severely restricted movement, constant surveillance, political indoctrination sessions continuing even in the workplace. It's work under duress.
And this taints global supply chains because Xinjiang produces so much. cotton, tomatoes.
Huge amounts. Around 20% of the world's cotton comes from Xinjiang, a significant chunk of the global supply of tomatoes and tomato products. And critically, a massive amount of polysilicon, which is essential for making solar panels. This means products made with Uyghur forced labor are absolutely flooding global markets, implicating countless international brands, maybe even things you own.
Has there been any international response on this specific issue, the forced labor?
There has been some action, yes. The U.S. passed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, UFLPA, which basically bans all goods from Xinjiang unless companies can definitively prove they weren't made with forced labor, a very high bar. There have also been global Magnitsky Act sanctions targeting specific Chinese officials, like the former party secretary Chen Quanguo, and entities like the XPCC itself. The EU, UK, and Canada have imposed some sanctions too.
So if you step back and look at the whole system, it's all interconnected, isn't it?
It's a truly perverse symbiosis. The state's repression literally fuels an economic engine built on exploitation. You've got the de-extremification laws providing the pretext for mass detention. The camps designed to break people's will, their lineage, their faith. The pervasive surveillance acting as a digital cage. And then the graduates and the so-called surplus laborers are funneled directly into this vast forced labor economy, this interlocking system, this horrifying assembly line for destruction. It screams crimes against humanity and genocide because the intent to destroy a distinct group physically, culturally, economically is just so undeniable and comprehensive.
Okay, so how does a country commit atrocities on this industrial scale and yet, in so many parts of the world, seemingly get away with it? Beijing's counter-narrative must be incredibly effective.
Oh, it's a chillingly sophisticated piece of state propaganda built on several key pillars of denial. First, and most prominently, they frame everything as counterterrorism, a necessary, legitimate fight against what they call the three evils: terrorism, separatism, and religious extremism. The camps in this narrative become benevolent vocational training centers designed to lift people out of poverty and cure them of extremist thoughts.
Right, and the history.
Total historical revisionism. They constantly push the line that Xinjiang has always been an inseparable part of China, going back millennia, that the whole concept of East Turkestan is a foreign fabrication pushed by hostile forces. They argue Uyghur culture isn't distinct, it's just one stream flowing into the great river of Chinese civilization, basically denying their unique identity.
And what about the actual evidence, the satellite photos, the survivor accounts?
Categorical denial. Dismissed out of hand. It's all disinformation, fake news, lies fabricated by anti-China forces in the West aimed at destabilizing the country. Forced labor. No, that's just poverty alleviation and voluntary job placement. Forced sterilization. Completely denied, fabricated lies. Any criticism from any source is immediately framed as part of a Western conspiracy to contain, coerce, and humiliate China.
And they actively push this narrative out.
Relentlessly. Through state media, through diplomats, they organize carefully managed press tours of Xinjiang for select journalists and foreign officials, showing them sanitized model facilities. They produce coerced proof-of-life videos where detainee Uyghurs are forced to read scripts denouncing the allegations and praising the Communist Party. It's a cynical, calculated effort to muddy the waters and portray China as the victim.
Which leads us to the global response, or lack thereof. This is where the world's moral compass seems just deeply, distressingly fractured.
It really exposes the raw geopolitical fault lines, doesn't it? You have one clear bloc, mainly Western democracies, the US, Canada, the UK, the EU. They've been the most vocal, officially labeling the abuses as crimes against humanity, or in some cases, genocide. They've imposed targeted sanctions, import bans like the UFLPA.
But they seem to be in the minority, globally speaking.
Shockingly, yes. You have this vast, largely silenced majority. A huge number of nations, particularly developing countries across Asia, Africa, Latin America, many of whom are deeply reliant on China's Belt and Road investments. And crucially, this includes a majority of Muslim-majority countries. Nations like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, instead of condemning the persecution of fellow Muslims, they often remain silent or actively defend China's narrative at the UN.
Citing what? Interference.
Usually citing non-interference in internal affairs or condemning the politicization of human rights. But let's be blunt. This support isn't earned through shared values. It's often purchased through economic leverage and diplomatic pressure. And the effect, as we said, is creating those permissive conditions for the repression to continue, shielding Beijing from meaningful consequences.
What about other players, corporations, NGOs?
Multinational corporations are definitely caught in the crossfire, facing immense pressure to audit their supply chains and divest from Xinjiang, though many resist or obfuscate. Human rights organizations like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and Uyghur groups themselves have been absolutely crucial in documenting the abuses and advocating for action. They're doing the vital work.
And the UN itself, the supposed guardian of human rights. It seems like a study in tragic contradiction here.
It really is. After years of delays and reported pressure from Beijing, the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, finally released its own assessment in August 2022. And it was a watershed report. It confirmed serious human rights violations had occurred. It found credible evidence of patterns of torture, sexual and gender-based violence, and coercive family planning measures. Crucially, it concluded that the extent of arbitrary detention and other abuses may constitute international crimes, in particular crimes against humanity. This wasn't some activist group. This was the UN's own Human Rights Office.
So a damning report from the UN itself. Surely that led to action.
You would think so, but no. Despite this authoritative report, the UN Human Rights Council, the main body responsible for addressing such issues, failed to even hold a formal debate on the findings. In October 2022, a motion simply to discuss the report was narrowly defeated, 19 against, 17 for, 11 abstaining after intense lobbying by China and its allies.
Defeated just to talk about it.
Exactly. It was widely seen as a stunning diplomatic victory for Beijing and condemned as a historic failure of the Human Rights Council. A betrayal of its mandate.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what does that failure signify?
It's incredibly alarming. It's more than just a failure to protect one persecuted group, as horrific as that is. It's a profound stress test for the entire post-World War II international human rights system. It signals that for many countries, bilateral economic interests and political allegiances now trump multilateral human rights commitments. It sets a deeply disturbing precedent. Powerful states might be able to commit mass atrocities with impunity as long as they have enough economic clout.
So in the face of all this, this systemic annihilation attempt, this international paralysis, the main line of defense, the voice for the silenced, really becomes the global Uyghur diaspora, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They are carrying an almost unimaginable burden.
Imagine living with that. The profound, persistent trauma, the constant agony of not knowing if your parents, your siblings, your children back home are alive or dead. So many haven't heard anything since maybe 2017. Just silence after a last fraught phone call. Cut off completely.
And then there's the survivor's guilt. How do you enjoy simple pleasures, a meal, a song, speaking your language when you know your loved ones are suffering, or may not even exist anymore? Everything becomes tinged with sorrow.
It must lead to a massive mental health crisis.
It does. Widespread depression, anxiety, PTSD, and often it's compounded by cultural taboos around mental health, plus a real lack of culturally competent therapists and resources in their host countries.
Yet somehow, amidst all this pain, they're desperately trying to keep their culture alive in exile, right?
It's an incredible act of resistance. With the Chinese state actively dismantling Uyghur identity in the homeland, the weight falls entirely on the diaspora. Parents worked tirelessly teaching their children the Uyghur language, the history, the traditions. You see community-run language schools popping up, cultural festivals like the Dapa Festival celebrating their identity, even restaurants becoming important cultural hubs. As one activist put it, finding ways for the culture to be not only existing but also thriving in exile is essential.
But their struggle doesn't end at the border, does it? China's repression actually follows them, this transnational repression.
It's relentless and terrifying. China actively targets Uyghurs living abroad. One of the most common tactics is using family members still in Xinjiang as hostages. Chinese security agents contact Uyghurs overseas, threatening harm to their relatives back home unless they stop their activism, agree to spy on the diaspora community, or even return to China themselves.
And those proof-of-life videos we mentioned.
A particularly cruel tactic. Forcing detained family members, parents, siblings to appear on camera, often looking distressed, delivering scripted messages denouncing the person abroad or praising the CCP. It's pure psychological warfare, designed to intimidate and sow disinformation.
Then there's the passport issue.
The weaponized passport. Chinese embassies routinely refuse to renew passports for Uyghurs abroad, especially those seen as activists or simply from certain regions. This renders them effectively stateless. Trapped in their host country, unable to work legally, access education or healthcare, open bank accounts, or travel. It creates extreme vulnerability.
And China pressures other countries to send Uyghurs back.
Yes, forced repatriation is a major threat. Beijing aggressively lobbies other governments, particularly neighbors in Central Asia, but also countries in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, to harass, detain, and forcibly deport Uyghur refugees back to China. This is a blatant violation of the international principle of non-refoulement, the cornerstone of refugee law. There are numerous documented cases from Turkey, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Thailand. And make no mistake, returnees face certain detention, torture, and lengthy prison sentences. It's a death sentence for some.
So despite this constant barrage of trauma, threats, and state harassment, the diaspora has become the primary global voice. In the information black hole China has tried to create, they are the vital link to the outside world.
They really are. They're testifying before parliaments in the U.S., Canada, Europe. They're speaking to journalists, organizing protests, collaborating tirelessly with human rights NGOs to document the illnesses and lobby governments for sanctions and action.
And many of these people aren't like career activists, are they?
Not at all. So many are just ordinary people, students, business owners, parents who've been thrust into this role because their own families disappeared. They carry this profound, absolutely exhausting burden of speaking not just for their silent relatives, but for an entire nation under siege.
So what does this all ultimately mean, this struggle between the state and the diaspora?
It reveals this fundamental asymmetry, doesn't it? You have Beijing, this global superpower, using all its might to silence, deny, erase. And then you have the diaspora, relatively small, scattered, vulnerable, engaged in this desperate, generative, creative campaign of witnessing, remembering, advocating, preserving. Every shared testimony, every cultural event they organize, every protest, every time they manage to get the story into the news. It's an act of defiance against oblivion. Honestly, their success or failure in keeping this horrific story alive in the global consciousness will literally determine whether Beijing's campaign of annihilation ultimately succeeds.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what we've explored today, it's not just another tragic human rights story. It feels like a chilling blueprint almost, a blueprint for how a powerful, technologically advanced state can attempt to literally erase an entire people, their culture, their history, their future, using every tool imaginable. High-tech surveillance, mass internment, forced sterilization, forced labor. The evidence is just overwhelming. The intent seems sickeningly clear. And the human cost it's absolutely devastating.
It really is. And what's equally stark and maybe equally terrifying is the world's fractured, inadequate response. It's a brutal testament to how raw economic power and geopolitical leverage can paralyze global institutions, can silence even the most basic, fundamental moral outrage. And this isn't ultimately just about the Uyghurs. It's about the dangerous erosion of the very principles of universal human rights, principles meant to protect everyone.
So what does all this mean for you, listening right now? Maybe consider this. From the clothes you wear, the cotton in them, to the technology you use, maybe even the solar panels on your roof. Global supply chains are deeply tainted by this. The silence of nations, driven by economic interest, creates a kind of complicity. The story of the Uyghurs isn't some distant, abstract issue happening over there. It's a stark, brutal reminder that the values we claim to uphold, freedom, dignity, human rights, can be shockingly fragile. They can be shattered by geopolitical ambition and cold economic self-interest, unless we as individuals make the choice to remember, to speak out, and to demand better from our companies, from our governments. So the question really is, what will you do with this knowledge?